Okay, so let's talk about course books, or you may call them textbooks. And what I'm going to do here is give you a set of criteria for how to evaluate an integrated skills course book. And by an integrated skills course book, I'm talking about the most popular course books which cover both speaking and listening, reading and writing. Okay, so the first criteria is age, and as you can see there in parentheses, I put the number of points which this is worth in the grading rubric. Um, is the textbook aimed at children, teenagers, or adults? And bear in mind this, is the actual material suitable for the author's intended age group? It may be that what the course book says it's intended for may not actually be true. There is material which is intended for adults, which may work better with teenagers, etc. And think about whether it could be used at more than one age group. What course book, for example, would the lady in the picture and the kids in the picture there be able to share together? Second is proficiency. What is the intended proficiency level? And again, is the actual material suitable for this intended level? A course book may say that it is aimed at beginners. Well, if it's beginners, what kind of beginners? Is it a zero beginner, someone who really starts from knowing nothing, or is it what we call a false beginner, someone who's probably done 2 or 3 years, maybe in high school? And again, the book might say it's aimed at a certain level, but is it actually at that level? Does it work at that level? 3, context. What kind of English is it giving you? Is it general English, which is the most popular kind of course book, or is it more English for specific purposes? Is it a book that operates better in an EFL context rather than an ESL context? Is it a book that probably could work better in a private language school rather than a public school or college? What kind of variety of English is the book providing? Is it American English? Is it British English? Is it whatever other English? Um, is it aimed at a co-ed class, mixed gender, or is it very gender specific? There are many women's colleges that might prefer a book which is more aimed at a specific female gender. What about regional appropriateness? Is there anything in the book that would make it more appropriate for a particular region of the world, or is it something that could be used anywhere? And what about the size of the classes? Is it a book that you could use in, say, private lessons or small classes? Or is it a book that you could use in a huge, great class of 100 students, for example? Next is supplementary materials. These days, course books come with a whole host of extra materials. For example, a teacher's book, which could be very useful in giving advice and tips to the teacher. Does it come with audio and video tapes or whatever CD-ROMs or whatever technology it delivers listenings and things to watch? Does it come with a workbook, or that is, can it be used for self-access? Does it provide you with tests, diagnostic tests, progress tests, and achievement tests? Has it got a web page backup? And can the student's book be operated by itself, or does it need the supplementary material? You want to have, in terms of choices, perhaps a book that stands by itself rather is dependent on a whole set of other materials. These days, a lot of student books come with a CD with the listening material, which is extremely useful for self-access. Is that true of the book that you're reviewing? Okay, now we get to some of the big points sections here. Notice this is 20 points, and this is about the approach. What are the author's stated views on language and methodology? What are the author's stated views on the relationship between the language, the learning process, and the learner? And are this author's stated ideas consistent with how the materials are treated in the course book? It may be that the author says, oh, I'm pursuing a communicative approach, but in fact the materials suggest a different approach. And if the author's methodological approach is not stated, what is the implicit approach of the book? A lot of books don't actually say this explicitly, but you can determine implicitly what the particular approach is. Good places to look for what the author says is the approach is on the cover of the book, and often on the inside. This is an examples from Interchange. So have a look at the inside cover, the cover itself, and you may find a lot of particular explicit statements about the approach. 6, organization. Another big one here, 20 points. How is the language being presented and organized into teachable units and lessons? What are the underlying principles of the syllabus design? Are they structural, functional, notional, theme-based, skills-based, task-based? Is the organization of the course book consistent with the intended aims? And how is a typical unit constructed? Does the structure of each unit vary from unit to unit, or is it pretty consistent? How much time does it take to cover each unit and the course book as a whole? So have a look at how the book is organized. You can often find that at the beginning of a book. Notice this is also Interchange, and it also tells you that it's organized in different syllabi topics. We've got topics, we've got functions, we've got grammar, and we've got LEXIS, and lots of other things. So have a look at that table of contents, and that will give you a good idea about the layout, the organization of the particular book. Layout. Is the layout clear and uncluttered? Is it easy to navigate the book, find units, glossaries, appendices, etc.? 8. Visual materials. Are the pictures merely cosmetic? A lot of course books have flashy color photographs, but they're not actually very usable as teaching material. Are the pictures integrated with the text? Are they exploitable for vocabulary development? And are they photocopyable? Which often is a problem with fancy color photographs, that they may not photocopy well. Here's an example from Interchange. It's a reading, Is TV Good or Bad? And there's a graphic, kind of a funny graphic, grotesque figures. How useful is that as a picture? Or is it just like wallpaper? So you want to look critically at the pictures, the graphics, and think about how useful they are in being exploited for language teaching, for vocabulary, etc. Grading. Grading's not the meaning that you probably springs to mind immediately. It's not how many points you get out of 10, but it refers to whether the units progressively become more difficult. Are they pitched at the same level throughout? Are some units more difficult than others? Are there differences in grading in each unit, within the unit? 10. Skills. Is there the right balance of the 4 skills? Reading, writing, speaking, and listening? Or is one emphasized more than the other? Are the skills integrated, or are they used as discrete units? And finally, what do students spend most of their time doing? Materials. Are the materials authentic? Are they semi-authentic or non-authentic? Is the material engaging and motivating? Is the material of the right length? Is it too short, too long, or just right? Is there a variety of text types? And this refers to different kind of readings and listenings. For example, we might have a reading from a newspaper. We might have a reading from a novel, a short story. We might have a reading from a manual about how a particular device works. So that's what I'm referring to in terms of different text types. And in terms of the listenings, are there a variety of speakers on the listening material? Speakers based on gender, age, and dialect and variety of English. And how do you rate the material overall? Are 12 tasks, activities, and exercises. Are there suitable pre-task, in-task, and post-task activities? Do tasks include both extensive and intensive exercises? Intensive, focusing perhaps on grammar. Extensive, focusing more on gist. Are tasks authentic? Are you asking students to do something that they would do in real life? Are there sufficient and appropriate pair work and group work activities? Are there good control practices as well as fluency practices? All of these issues go into the notion of tasks and activities and exercises. Culture. Is the material too culturally loaded? It may be that students don't want to hear that much about the particular culture, or maybe it's so detailed that it's hard to understand. And the opposite extreme is the material too culturally bland, so that we don't learn anything about the culture. Is the material offensive to a particular religious or ethnic or cultural group? Is it racist, sexist, ageist? How would you describe the ideology of this course book? And that might be very hidden. If you have a course book full of pictures of bathrooms and kitchens out of some dream house, that could be suggesting a particular very Western consumerist ideology. 14, grammar. Is grammar presented deductively or inductively? How much does the grammar correspond to real life use? Are there sufficient examples and contextualizations of the grammar items? Is the grammar illustrated at the sentence level and the discourse level? Is there sufficient and clear grammar explanation, which may come at different parts of the book? And is there a special grammar review section that students can use as a reference, which is often very, very useful? LEXIS, vocabulary. What kind of LEXIS is presented? How is it taught? How much LEXIS is taught? And is it too much, too little, just right? When I talk about the kind of LEXIS, I'm talking about how specialized it is or not specialized. Is it appropriate? Is it useful? Is it universal or specialized or challenging? Is the LEXIS intended for production or reception, or both? Is the LEXIS recycled? Very important. And is there a glossary or index at the back of the book where students can go to just to look up the meaning of a word? And you'll find in books like Interchange, they have very specific vocabulary activities. And there's an example of a particular focus on grammar and focus on vocabulary. Pronunciation. Are there specific pronunciation exercises, or does the teacher have to create their own? Do they practice pronunciation, intonation, stress, etc.? are, if there are no specific pronunciation exercises, can the book be successfully used to teach pronunciation? And that requires some kind of judgment of the materials, the listening materials, especially. There's an example from Interchange of a very explicit exercise activity on pronunciation. 17. Homework and self-access. Does the coursebook offer possibilities for homework, either explicitly or implicitly? Is there a workbook as a separate book that complements the student book? Can students operate the book alone, or can it only be operated in tandem with a teacher? Criticism of a lot of community language books is that they really need the teacher to operate the pair works and group work activities. Flexibility, and that refers to how easily you can move in and out of the textbook. How easily can you skip sections within a unit and whole units and whole units themselves, and how easily can you supplement and adapt the course book. How can you move around it? Maybe you want to go from chapter 1 and then go to chapter 2 and then go to chapter 6 or unit 6. Can you do that? Finally, big one. Would I use this course book? Here you need to go into detail and summarize the advantages and disadvantages of the book. You're probably going to say a lot of the things you've already said, but bring them all together. And say explicitly whether you would actually use this book and why you would use it. Or if you don't like it, tell us exactly why you don't like it. Finally, format and referencing. Check for spelling, typos, sentence fragments, etc. And also, you're going to be referring to the readings, to Brown and other articles that you have read to support your arguments. Did you reference these readings?